All right, welcome back to the weekly Rotoworld Fantasy Basketball Q&A. I am back. I am Noah Rubin, and I am here with Adam King, who's also back. We are both back and ready to talk fantasy hoops for the last 2 days before the All-Star break. Last 3 days. There are 3 games Thursday night, 13 games on Wednesday night, and I believe 6 games tonight. So there's still plenty of fantasy basketball games or just regular basketball games to be played. I'm assuming most people have a 2-week matchup that'll kind of finish out after the All-Star break. So it's a slightly different week, but we just keep it rolling. We adjust. Adam, before we get into any questions that we may have had or will have that are going to be asked soon, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. Slept through my alarm. It rained last night. I always sleep heavier when it rains just because I like the sound of the rain on the roof. So, slept through my alarm, played basketball last night. So, felt a little bit of a tweak in the calf, but I think that's more old age than a specific injury. So, managed to play the whole second half, played through it. Picked up a large pizza on the way home, which I probably shouldn't have because I'd just done all the good work and burned off the calories and played basketball. Other than that, doing well. Not a lot of injury news, which is always nice to wake up to.
Yeah, I guess your calf injury is probably the only meaningful injury here, but you're able to play through it. You're able to play through the general soreness. I see you even have the team uniform on today, which is kind of cool that we're both just randomly wearing this color.
Coordinated, of course.
Yes, of course. We planned this for sure. But I guess the only real injury news is that Jamal Murray and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope are both doubtful for Wednesday. They both kind of exit early on Monday before the first half even ended. Reggie Jackson and Justin Holiday started the second half in their place. I don't think Holiday's a guy to really consider, but we saw Reggie Jackson have success as a starter earlier this season. Is he a guy that, knowing that Jamal Murray isn't going to play on Wednesday, and if I'm not mistaken, do they play again on Thursday as I'm trying to get this schedule pulled up? So you could get 2 games. Nope, just kidding. Just Wednesday. So it'd be 1 game of streaming out of Reggie Jackson. Is that worth it to you to pick up? I mean, obviously, I guess if you have a limit on moves you can make, that could impact your decision certainly over the course of a 2-week stretch. But is he a guy that you're interested in?
Look, depends on limits. I think if it's just for 1 game, it's probably a bit risky because injury to Jamal Murray doesn't sound too serious. But I mean, if KCP misses as well, then I would say Reggie would be worth considering. It's a high volume day, so I think there's 13 games. So just keep that in mind if you are considering streaming, whether he is actually in your best 8 or 10 players or however many active spots you have. Look, he's probably worth a look. Christian Brown, Peyton Watson. I think it'll spread out a little bit, but Jackson would be the one to look at it. And I guess the fact that KCP is doubtful after coming back from a hamstring thing is just another example of teams mismanaging these injuries, much like the Pacers did, which luckily didn't cost Halliburton a significant amount of time, but he was managed and that sort of thing. We've seen many examples of it this year. So it's interesting that teams are trying to push these guys a little bit more, and I'm wondering whether that games cap is factoring in to any decisions here. Or, I mean, I wouldn't think it would be for someone like a KCP because he's not in line for any awards or anything like that. But whether there's player bonuses attached to things, I don't know all of that stuff.
Yeah, and that'll be, I guess, kind of an interesting thing to monitor. It might just be 1 game of streaming out of Reggie Jackson, but I guess could be worth it. We'll see. But it also is interesting that with the hamstring injury like that they didn't just say, hey, we have 2 games left until the All-Star break. Let's just not play you these last 2 games and let you rest to the All-Star break, because that would give you all just extra time to recover. Obviously, the game against the Bucks was I wouldn't call it a extra meaningful matchup, but it was against another contending team. And their game on Wednesday is against the Kings, who they also just lost to. So now it's 2 straight blowout losses. So maybe they were hoping to kind of go into the All-Star break on a better note and ended up backfiring. So hopefully he's able to come back after the All-Star break and they just let him rest. The only other, I guess, real news, I mean, there's a couple questionable players, but Thad Young signing with the Suns, I don't think that's really, making any waves in the fantasy basketball space. But there was something else that happened last night that was kind of cool. Victor Wembanyama had a triple-double with blocks. He scored over 20 points, and I think they said the first rookie with a block or a triple-double that included blocks since, I think it was Duncan Robinson.
David Robinson. Probably not Duncan Robinson.
Probably not Duncan Robinson.
Let me check, but I don't think Duncan Robinson has 10 blocks in his career, does he? I'm not sure.
He's got to be close. It might be like 9.
He probably has,
yeah. But yeah, David Robinson, excuse me, which is pretty cool. But I had I guess not like a question that was asked, but a topic that was brought up in one of my league Discord chats. Is Victor Wembanyama a guy that you would consider if you had the number 1 overall pick in redraft next season? Like, I know this is incredibly early to even be really talking about that, but you're only like 2 months away from doing your super early redraft rankings for next season. So is that something that you're considering?
Look, at this point, I wouldn't rank him 1. I wouldn't have him as the number 1 player next year. I definitely have him top 5. But I even put it on Twitter yesterday in my daily recap. I think I would. I think if I had the number 1 pick, I'd seriously consider him, because he's been what he's doing is just, we haven't seen it before. And the fact he's this good on a team that isn't trying, that doesn't have a point guard, and they're managing him, he's still only playing 28 minutes, 29 minutes a night. So just imagine, I mean, next year, I guess we could safely assume they probably won't be pushing for a championship next year, but they're going to get another good draft pick. So they're going to, I don't know whether they'll look to bring in a point guard or look to trade for a point guard, but we don't know exactly what their team, but even basing it on what we've seen this year, if you consider this his floor with the way the Spurs are playing, he's top 10 this year, I think. And he's a little bit like a Giannis or a Luka, in that if you look at rankings, if you punt, I would assume, I haven't done it, if you punt turnovers, he probably climbs, because I know I have him in industry pickup and he often gets 4 or 6 turnovers. So if you punt turnovers, he probably moves up to be a top 6 player already. I know a lot of those top elite fantasy guys have high turnovers. So he wouldn't go from like the 11th ranked player to the 2nd ranked player or anything like that. But, and I mean, remember back, he started the season well, but he's really come on in the last month. His scoring is up, his rebounds are up. He's figuring out the NBA, and so his efficiency will increase. His free throws are much better now than they were to start the season. So, yeah, that's a long way of answering that question with probably yes. I'd consider him if I had number 1 pick. You're looking at him, Shea, and Jokic, I would think would be in that discussion. And if you want to take a little bit of a chance, I'd probably go Wemby, because he is a lot of fun.
Yeah, Basketball Monster has him 12th over the course of the season with a turnover punt. He bumps up to 9th.
Okay.
But I mean, just looking at the numbers, because he 28.4 minutes per game this season. The only player in the top, so I guess really top 50 that has played less minutes than him is Daniel Gafford. But he's obviously really high because of the really high field goal percentage and block numbers, but he's 31st. Like, nobody else is playing 30 minutes or less and providing first round value. He's shooting 46.8% from the floor. That's the lowest among anybody that's first rounder. And I have to imagine that the 7'4" guy, even if he continues to take tough shots because he can hit them, that he's not going to shoot 46.8% next season. Like, I would just assume that improves. The turnovers probably aren't going to go anywhere just because he likes to do stuff with the ball in his hands. But I would assume like it could improve, especially if they have like a really good point guard that they're looking to build around. The points I would assume go up. The threes assume go up. The rebounds will probably just kind of correlate with the minutes, but still could go up. So, yeah, I think he has to be in contention for the top pick next season, along with Jokic, SGA. You could maybe throw Luka in that conversation. I'd say those are the top 4 in my mind right now. But yeah, like the fact that you could consider Wemby to be the number 1 overall pick next season in redraft leagues is pretty cool for a guy that is a little over halfway through his rookie season. But
yeah, and if you look across, again, going to Basketball Monster, if you look across his numbers, and if you're familiar with Basketball Monster, you know that green is good, red is bad in terms of the color coding. And he's outside of turnovers, he's almost a positive in every category. And that's rare. There aren't many players. Kevin Durant is someone that can do that. Outside of him, there really isn't anyone who's
Kawhi.
Oh yeah, Kawhi. Okay, yeah, he probably would be. But doing it like in his rookie season is unheard of. And the categories that he's a negative in, assists, I'm pretty confident his assists are going to come up. Like we've seen him already have a double-digit assist game. He's only at 3.2 for the season. I reckon next year he's closer to 4.5, which would bump him up to be a positive. Field goal percentage, as you said, he's at 46.8%. That probably gets closer to 50. I don't think he's ever going to be a 60, 65, like Gafford and those guys, but closer to 50. And his free throws, he's at 81. I don't know, no reason he can't get to 83, 84. So even just little improvements like that. And of course, that would then bump his points up closer to 23, 24. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think I need to sell it too hard. People have watched him and seen what he can do. But yeah, I definitely think that he'll be in that discussion. He won't go number 1 in every league because there'll be some people that want to play it safe and take the proven player in Jokic or SGA. But yeah, I definitely, I'll be, put it this way, I will be in as many leagues as it takes for me to get the number 1 pick so I can get Wemby. I want him in at least one league next season.
And looking at the past 2 months, 26.7 minutes per game, so it's gone down. But the points are up. The field goal percentage is 49.6. So I think it was more just the start to the season was slow. Yeah. And it's already kind of evened out a little bit. The free throw percentage, 82.6. So that's already like a little bit better there. So yeah, I mean, I think big things are expected from him and they will continue to be. And he has been delivering, which is a lot of fun to watch in real time. But we'll go ahead and get into some of these questions here. This first one was dropped in a few hours before we started the show, which is nice and appreciated, so we can have some ready. But I guess we'll just talk about standard ESPN points league, which I think actually takes into account field goal percentage a little bit by giving you like -1 for an attempt and +1 for making a shot. So who would you roster out of Keontae George, Gigi Jackson, or Aaron Nesmith in a 12-team ESPN points league? Adding Keontae would add 3 games to the playoffs. How does that impact things for you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 games are nice in the playoffs. We saw Keontae George start yesterday. I would assume he's going to start rest of the way now, given Utah look like they're, I wouldn't say packing it in, but they're heading down that path. The worry is that he's rested a little bit down the stretch. If they replicate what they did last season, we saw Markkanen miss some games. I mean, Keontae obviously doesn't fall into that category of a proven guy. They do want to see what they've got in him. But for me, Gigi, I don't know. He missed yesterday's game because of, I think it was disciplinary stuff.
He broke a team rule.
Yeah. And I think having done a bit of research, and I listened to Josh's podcast yesterday, which made me go and dig a bit deeper. This is not out of character for him. He has some issues off the court. So yeah, I'm not like, I mean, Memphis have shown if he does something wrong, they just won't play him. They don't care. So for me, it's Nesmith. I think his role is locked in. The Pacers are pushing for the playoffs. He's been pretty good, even in a points league, I would say. I think he's been averaging enough in the scoring category to be valuable in a points league. I'm no points league expert, but I would think he would be the one here that I'd be considering.
Yeah, I was thinking Neesmith as well. Even if it is points league, he's better in category than points. But for the things you mentioned, I think Keontae George would be number 2, and I think it would be close. Gigi Jackson is not, like, among these 3. Like, I wouldn't go with him. It's interesting because he was the number 1 player. He was supposed to be the number 1 pick in this upcoming draft when he was still in high school, like a couple of years out projections. So obviously things were going to change, but reclass, went to college a year early at South Carolina. So he went from being the number 1 player in the high school class, celebrated, got to shoot whenever he wants, then went to South Carolina and things didn't go very well. So he's like this young kid, like younger than the other freshmen. And like, it was just kind of a bad situation. Not saying it wasn't that he didn't like do anything wrong, but I think just being a young kid trying to navigate that is difficult. Because I remember there was one game like immediately after, got on Instagram Live, and I think he was like bashing the coaches like in the locker room. And it's like, come on, buddy. Like, I know you're 18, but like, come on, you got to be a little smarter about this. So a young kid, like, I'm not worried about him. Like, I know this is a redraft question, not a dynasty question, but he's going to like mature and like those things will go away. But I think for the rest of the season, between it being also like Memphis and the injuries that they've been dealing with and the lack of consistency in the rotation, I would kind of steer clear. Keontae George, I would assume he starts the rest of the season. Will Hardy kind of after the game said that because they asked him, it was a pretty telling quote. I'm going to try and pull it up as I'm talking about it, but kind of asked him why he moved Keontae George into the starting lineup. He said, "It's time. Keontae stepping into that role is ultimately what's best for our team moving forward," which kind of goes with the idea that, hey, maybe they're actually not going to make a push for the play-in tournament for the second year in a row. They're going to kind of give us a nice pump fake or like a nice jab step into making us think that they're going to try and make it into the play-in tournament, but then they're going to kind of reel it back and accept being back in the lottery. Some interesting reports and quotes coming out of like the Jazz beat, I feel like the past 12 hours or so, just about like the locker room being kind of defeated and like the front office isn't supporting them trying to win, which I was just found like kind of interesting. So hopefully it doesn't turn into something that ends up being a massive mess, but I think Neesmith is the safest option. But George should also have a pretty secure role, so I'm not opposed to him either.
Yeah, that's fair, I think.
Yeah. Do you guys think Desmond Bane comes back this year? He got dropped in my ESPN Fantasy League, and I have first waiver priority. What do you think? Do you think that Memphis is going to bring back Desmond Bane?
It's a tough one. I hope they do. And I think if it was up to Bane, it would be yes.
Of course, yeah.
He already came out and said he would like to beat the timetable, and I'm going to say yes. I know some people are thinking they might just shut him down. I think he comes back, and part of that is probably that I just drafted him in a draft I did the other night for the rest of the season. I took him with my last pick and just threw him straight into my IR spot. So I'm hoping he does. He is back with the team training, doing some stuff. So he's getting closer. I don't know how long he's been out. 5 weeks, maybe 4.
You can pull that up while you're talking.
If you've got that, yeah. So I guess the question is here: do you spend your number one, your waiver wire priority on him? Probably depends on where you're sitting in the standings. If you're in the middle or you're not sort of guaranteed a playoff spot, I probably wouldn't, just because of the doubt. But if you're right up the top and you can afford to just grab him, and if you have an IR spot, and just plug him in there, because if he does come back in 2 weeks, say after the All-Star break or just after that, playoffs will be starting. They're going to ramp him up, but even in 25 minutes a night on that Grizzlies team, he could easily average 20 points with 5 assists and a steal and 3 threes. So, which would make him a must-roster player in points league. So, yeah, I think if you can take the chance, I would. But as I said, I do think they're going to ease him back in. So like, there's no way he comes back in and plays back-to-backs, for example.
Yeah. And because I remember there was a quote, and I just found it from the other day, that is about both Marcus Smart and Desmond Bane, that Marcus Smart was originally slated to be reevaluated February 22nd. Desmond Bane was supposed to be reevaluated February 25th, and they now have no timetable. This was from at Fast Break on Twitter. Who I'm pretty sure that, they do a good bit of Memphis stuff. So, I don't know when he'll come back, or when he will come back, if he will come back. I would hope, like you said, I hope he does. But yeah, it's been about a month actually, because the last game he played in was January 12th. So that was when he got hurt. So been about a month. I hope he comes back, but it wouldn't shock me if they, based on what they've also been doing with their injury report and who has played and who hasn't, it wouldn't shock me if they just kind of held him out at this point, or hopefully, like you said, maybe give him some minutes and manage the games played, no back-to-backs, things like that. So I don't know, fingers crossed, but I'm not very optimistic about him playing much for the rest of the season.
No, and like I said, I'd only use that priority if you're safe, if you're sitting at the top, and him coming in is going to be a bonus if he does play. I wouldn't be picking him up under the impression that, hey, I'm relying on this guy to come back and help me win the championship, because there's a pretty good chance that doesn't happen.
Yeah, he is not the savior that you need. All right, from Clark Kent, any update on Scoot? He is questionable tonight. I am 90% sure that's what that said, but I will pull the injury report back up just to double check. Scoot Henderson questionable. Anthony Simons probable. So, maybe he comes back tonight. Maybe it ends up being, I think that I think they have at least one more game before the All-Star break. Let me see if I can get that up really quickly. They play Minnesota tonight and on Thursday. So they have two more games before the All-Star break. So it's unclear, is Scoot going to be back or not for either of those. But he's questionable right now.
Look, if you've got him in your IR spot, maybe he comes back. Portland or another team that are going to be pretty dodgy and shifty with their injury reporting and resting. And Anthony Simons is probable with an ankle sprain. I don't think it was an ankle sprain. You can't come back from an ankle sprain in 2 games, generally speaking. So I think this was more of let's just give you a couple of days off and then maybe bring you back for the last 2 games before the All-Star break. So, just hold him and hope that he does come back, because looking at that next question, which is the Shaden Sharp question, with no Shaden Sharp, Scoot's getting minutes. So is Shaden Sharp a hold? No. He's out for the season, isn't he?
That's what
He had surgery.
Yeah, undergo core surgery, because I remember writing the blurb. So a week ago, I don't think they gave an official timeline when he underwent core surgery, but considering he had core surgery in February, I seriously doubt that he's back, especially with where they are in the standings, things like that. So wouldn't be I'd say it's a drop. Shout out to the 13-team Roto League. So that's kind of cool. I haven't played in a 13-team Roto League, so it's interesting. But whether it's a 1-team Roto League or a 113-team Roto League, I think it's fair to drop Shaden Sharp at this point. Rest of the season: Herb Jones, Marvin Bagley, Ausar Thompson, and Bojan Bogdanovic. Let's I don't know. We'll pick out a favorite from these, I guess.
Bagley. Sadly and unfortunately for me, it's Bagley. Bojan, no. I think the fact he only played 23 minutes or something on a Knicks team that's missing half of their roster doesn't bode well for me, for him. I think he's just going to be a point streamer. That's it. Ausar, I'm not as high on Ausar as others, probably because I'm just jaded by what he did at the start of the season, what Detroit did with him at the start of the season. Herb Jones started the season really well, but is basically just slotted into that specialist role now, I think. Bagley is starting. He had a double-double last night, I think, with a steal and a block. And I think I put up on Twitter, this is what we're going to get from him. We're going to get 15 points. We're going to get 10 rebounds. Pretty efficient, a block, maybe a steal. So, yeah, for me, it's Bagley.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually wrote about it in the Dynasty rankings that I published because I tried to do a few blurbs under a handful of players, ones that were affected by the trade deadlines. They were the post-trade deadline rankings, and just saying, like, this next 2 months is going to, I guess, like, in a way, make or break Bagley's career. Like, could this kind of be him? Like, I'm not a believer in Bagley, but if he takes the next 2 months to close out the season and he plays really, really well and Washington feels like, hey, like, maybe we have something here that can help us in the future, and he's just kind of their center moving forward into next season, like, I think that is within the, I guess, range of outcomes for him. But I'm not a believer in his talent, so it could just be, hey, he plays well the final 2 months, not great, plays fine, gives you a double-double. But come next season, like, they're looking at other options at center. So we'll see for him, but I would agree. I think out of these four, he does have, I think, the most upside too. Herb Jones has played pretty well the last few games, but like you said, mostly steals, and then, like, if he's hot, like, threes as well. Ausar Thompson, I guess Ausar Thompson would have the most upside, but given, like you said, like, how Monty Williams has used him this season, very frustrating and kind of, like, confusing. So yeah, not as enticing as the talent should be, I guess. I have clinched first seed in the playoffs. This is from Steve. I've clinched the first seed in the playoffs for a few weeks now. I'm holding out hope for Jordan Poole in spite of my better judgment. Is there any hope he wakes up, or do I pick up Kelly Olynyk? Or excuse me, I don't know if this is Kelly Olynyk or Kelly Oubre, Scoot Henderson or Jeremy Sohan. We'll consider both Oubre or Olynyk just for the sake of the question. But would you hold out hope for Jordan Poole, one? And two, of those guys, which ones would you pick up?
So I'm just having a look. I'd probably have. Well, for me, Poole is not a hold. So I guess that answers the first part of the question. I think I'd be okay with dropping him. I think there'll be the odd game where you'll go, should have held him. But generally speaking, yeah, I wouldn't be bothering. In terms of who I would have over him, Kelly Olynyk, I probably would. Kelly Oubre, I would at the moment. That might change once Melton's back, and Tobias Harris was out yesterday, but I think he's questionable for that next game
tonight. Yeah.
Embiid probably isn't coming back in the sort of regular fantasy season, so that probably doesn't matter. So I'd probably have Oubre over him at the moment. Sohan, I don't know. He's a tricky one. He's very hot and cold. And he's hot. He's not hot and cold from one game to the next. It's usually week to week. So he'll have a good week and then a bad week. So, which makes him a little bit riskier because you might pick him up and he's a top 60 player for a week, but then the next week he's outside the top 200, which could cost you a week. So I think if you look across the next 6 weeks, I'd probably have Sohan over him, but you would need to take that chance. Scoot, I definitely have Scoot over him, but as we've touched on, the whole Portland situation is a little bit dicey and risky. So, I guess I'd probably have all of them over Jordan Poole. And who would I prioritize? Maybe it's Kelly Olynyk, maybe Kelly Oubre. Depending sort of what you need. Olynyk has only played 22 and 21 minutes, but he's been really good in those minutes, and he's shown already that he's like the third best player in Toronto. But again, we don't even know what Toronto are doing. They're a mess.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, I think you might be right with Olynyk. I think that Olynyk seems like the safest option to pick up, with Scoot having the most upside. I'm still 100% in on the Scoot hype train that the final, whether it's 3 weeks or like 6 weeks of the season, he's going to be kind of given free reign to be the point guard and just see what it can make happen with him. So I'm excited to see what he can do with that opportunity. And I think that's going to be beneficial for fantasy basketball, even if he probably is going to struggle with his field goal percentage and turnovers. But I think it's between Olynyk and Scoop. But yeah, I would take all of them over Jordan Poole at this point. Yeah. I think did I say this yesterday when we were doing the show, or was it a different show that I have dropped Jordan Poole and I'm happy with my experience
yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. I think he shot 1 for 12 last night. So once again,
he did have 3 steals, I think, from memory. So outside of the scoring, he was actually decent, but that's not why you're holding him. You can't rely on him for 3 steals. And so it's points that you're holding him for. And he's had too many games where he's 1 of 12, 3 of 9. It's been a bad experience.
All right, from Mike, traded Jaren Jackson Jr. for Fred VanVleet. Needed assists after John Morant went down, but also worried about shutdown/rest days for Jaren Jackson. Was that a good trade? My quick, off the bat, you're nodding your head. I was going to say yes. It definitely makes sense with the logic of the needing the assists and worrying about the shutdown/rest days. I think that's a very real possibility considering they're already starting to do it a little bit and it's February. And I think just looking at 9-cat rankings, Fred VanVleet is 26th on Basketball Monster. Jaren Jackson Jr. is 55th. Most of his value, obviously, in the past, he was really, really good because he was blocking a lot of shots. The blocks have not been as good with John Morant not in the lineup because he's had to do a lot more offensively. But the scoring is up, but you're not really getting you're not drafting Jaren Jackson Jr. so that he can score 20 points. You're drafting him so that he can get 3 blocks. And that just hasn't been the case recently. So, yeah, I think great trade.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, it's pretty no-brainer for me. Jaren's been a bit disappointing. VanVleet's probably been a little bit underwhelming, but he has started to pick things up on the defensive end. He's obviously out at the moment, so you're probably buying low on him a little bit because of that. But he'll be back, and Houston are likely going to try and push for a play-in this season. I think just given how bad they've been for the past few years, they want something for their fans. So, yeah, I think VanVleet is safer rest of the season.
Yep. All right. How do you feel about Melton's role once he comes back? Is he going to be a 30-plus minutes guy, or does Kyle Lowry and Buddy Hield eat to his minutes and make him more of a droppable guy or borderline 12-team 9-cat kind of guy? I have him sitting on my bench in industry pickup, in my IR in industry pickup, and have been for a while. So I'm not going to drop him yet and wait and see what kind of happens when they're fully healthy. But what do you think? Is he a guy that you're expecting big things from once he's healthy and they kind of have their full rotation available outside of Joel Embiid?
I think so. I think he'll still be top 100 pretty safely, just because of what he can do on the defensive end. He'll get you some assists. With no Embiid there, they need everyone to score a little bit more. So he'll be double-digit points anyway. So he's not just one of these specialist guys who gets all of his value from steals. He will get you some value in other categories. So I think 30 minutes, I don't know. Maybe he cracks 30. I think he's probably just a bit under because they do have those other options now with Lowry and Hield. Mm-hmm. But I still think he'll be a 12-team guy rest of season.
Yeah, I agree. Even if I guess we're not really sure. Is he going to come off the bench or is Buddy Hield going to come off the bench? We'll have to see once everybody gets healthy. But either way, I think there's going to be enough minutes to go around between Maxey, Hield, and Melton. Unfortunately, Lowry might kind of eat into those a little bit just because I don't see him signing with them and playing 10 minutes per game. I think it's closer to somewhere in the 15 to 20 range, partially because of, he was Nick Nurse's point guard for really a handful of years, won a championship. So
yeah,
Nick Nurse is going to give him minutes. So not going to be
ideal. Although I wouldn't be concerned about Lowry coming in and playing 30 minutes.
No.
He's not going to come in, and I think he might close. They might close.
Do they bench Tyrese Maxey for Kyle Lowry?
Who knows?
No,
they won't.
No.
So I think Lowry, like I said, he could close. just because of he's a proven point guard. He's a veteran. He's done it before. So, but he's going to be 20 minutes, 22 minutes, maybe. We've seen his body can't handle it.
All right, this one here. Should I keep Taylor Hendricks? I guess this would kind of depend on what league you're in. Like if you're in a dynasty league, then yes. If you're in a redraft league, I would say no, unless this is like a 30-team one, which there are those. But I think that he's going to see more minutes down the stretch, and especially over the final few weeks, that he's going to probably play a large role. But the minutes right now, it's not enough to keep him around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think he's must roster now. This is probably a little bit like the question we had earlier. I can't remember which one it was. It was probably the Bane one a little bit. I know Hendricks obviously isn't injured, but if you're at the top of the standings and you can get him in to your squad or he's sitting there sort of, you're not relying on his production, I think he will be better in a month. So he'll be giving you some added production, but he's not doing enough at the moment. If you're relying on him for production, he's only getting 20 minutes a night. So I think scaling up or looking forward, yes. Right now, probably not.
Is Wendell Carter Jr. a must-roster player for the Orlando Magic? What do you think, Kingy?
No.
I was pulling up his numbers real quick because I felt like there was a really good stretch from him, but
he had a
last
good week,
few games,
2 weeks or something. But
came back from injury and played really well, and then the past 2 weeks he's been really bad. Actually, wow. Yeah,
I think the Magic have shown that they're not afraid to run with Badadze or Wagner, or like they'll go with what the matchup dictates. So there's no commitment from them to he's our starter. We need to play him 30 minutes. They'll just go with whoever they need to go with to win the game, and that's his ceiling is not high enough.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I even have him rostered anywhere, so I haven't really, kept that in mind. But I don't think he's a must roster. I think he had, like you said, a good week, almost 2 weeks, good week and a half. We'll call it good week and a half. Noah, what's up? I've just read your dynasty rankings. How high do you think Jalen Johnson could rise? I can easily see him being top 15. I think he'll be better in fantasy than Paolo and Scotty. Your opinion? Well, just to reference where I have all of them ranked, let me see if I can get to that quickly. I have Scotty Barnes at 13. I have Paolo at 19. I have Jalen Johnson at 32, which I haven't checked to see how Jalen Johnson compares to other dynasty rankings. But I imagine that he is still a good bit below Paolo and Scotty Barnes and most other analyst rankings. But obviously a lot higher than he was at the beginning of the season. I think he could be top 15, but I think that right now, I can't put him that high considering it has only been a little over half a season. And he's doing this as the, kind of third scoring option behind Trey and DeJounte. I mean, obviously, you could even say like fourth or fifth behind Bogdanovic as well as probably more of the scoring option. But I think the reason I would have him lower than Paolo and Scotty is because we've seen what they can do as either the 1 or 1A option or 1A or 1B option for their teams, trying to lead a team. And I find that more valuable than what Jalen Johnson is doing in a smaller, or kind of a different role, less responsibility, less of the focus from the defense is on him. I think he has that type of upside to get to where they are, but based on what he has done so far, I can't have him in that same kind of tier. But I think having him at 32 is probably fairly high, but I think it's also fair given his upside and what he has shown in his first season, really playing a legit role. I don't know. What are you thinking about the upside of Jalen Johnson?
Yeah, I love his upside, but I agree. And again, you're the dynasty guy here, so we'll go with what you said. But I agree that I don't, at the moment, I don't see him being option 1 or even 1B on offense. I think he's more of a third guy, like a Jalen Williams in OKC. So I think there's enough there that he could have some top 15 seasons, top 20 seasons. But the upside for Paolo and Scotty is just higher, I think, because we've seen it from them this season. They've had stretches. Scotty Barnes more so than Paolo, but So I think he could get there, but I would still have both of those guys above Jalen by about around 1 to 2 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the interesting thing with it is that, I mean, looking at just strictly 9-cat ranking, Jalen Johnson's 40th and Scotty Barnes is 24th this season. And obviously Paolo's way outside of the top 100, but it's because of, poor shooting percentages.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're looking at strictly 9-cat ranking, like Jalen Johnson is more appealing because he's just shooting the ball more efficiently than Paolo is. And he gives, I think, a little bit more defensively. But when looking at like actually, I guess, trying to encompass versus 9-cat play, like actual impact that is made on a fantasy basketball roster, like Paolo's going to be able to be potentially like a 25 point per game scorer at some point, and improve on other things. So I think kind of his upside there like makes him more valuable than what the 9-cat ranking actually says. Where like it could just be possible that Jalen Johnson's 9-cat ranking looks better than Paolo for the rest of his career, just because he is already like shooting more efficiently and giving a little bit more defensively. So it's kind of like an interesting thing to kind of balance. So yeah, it makes it interesting and very like opinionated depending on what you value, because
and it'll come down to categorical need and stuff, all that sort of stuff as well. Like in a roto league, I might go Jalen Johnson because he just doesn't hurt you anywhere. Whereas Paolo obviously has those really good categories, but then he hurts you in other categories. And also if you're punting certain categories, Paolo gets a huge bump, whereas Jalen Johnson just stays around that same range. So there's factors to consider, but generally speaking, I'd still prefer Paolo over him.
Yeah, we can get down the rabbit hole of what matters in building a dynasty team and how to encompass that in rankings, because I have spent a lot of time thinking about that. So it's very interesting. But instead of doing that, we'll move on to another question. Noah and Kingy, Brian B, what's up? Should I trade Jaren Jackson and Brandon Miller for Luka? I'm just going to assume standard redraft. I'd say yes. Brandon Miller has been awesome for a rookie, but I think getting at least top 10, arguably top 5 player in fantasy basketball for Jaren Jackson, who's been disappointing, not necessarily his fault, but the numbers aren't as good. And Brandon Miller, who has been good for a rookie, but still not quite in the same threshold. So yeah, Luka, just doing the 2-for-1 for Luka is excellent.
Yep, agreed. Unless you really need blocks, that would be the only reason I wouldn't consider it, is because Luka's not going to get you many blocks. But other than that, I would definitely do that.
Yeah. Are Derek Lively and Scoot Henderson holds for you?
Yes, at the moment. Yep.
Yeah, I think so too. I guess whether Lively starts or Gafford will be interesting when they're both healthy and what the minutes kind of look like. But at this point, yeah, I'd say hold both.
Yep.
All right, traded Suggs and Ayton for a 2024 and a 2024 first for Cat to flip Cat towards 2025 firsts. I think I like the Suggs Ayton and a first for Cat. I think that's pretty fair. And if you're able to get Cooper Flag and it ends up working out, then I think it's a great deal. I think it ends up being a question mark because we haven't even seen him play in college. So hopefully he ends up being the generational player that it seems like he is. And if it works out, it works out. But I guess we'll see in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's obviously a long way down the track. As you said, he hasn't even played college yet. So basically you're sort of saying, would you give up Cat to get Cooper Flag? Because you've already traded Suggs, Ayton, and a 24 first. And I'm okay with doing that. I think to get Cat. Cat's still in his prime.
I think that's fair.
It means you get. Well, I'm assuming you're probably looking to move Cat now to secure that 2025. Well, you need the first pick, really, because Cooper Flag is projected to be number 1. So, yeah, I think that's okay. I think Cat, I don't know, how old's Cat now? I feel like he's probably 27.
He is 28.
28, okay. So, when you get Cooper another couple of years, Cat will be closer to 30. He's still going to be really good. But as you said, Cooper Flag, you're getting potentially then a decade of a guy that is, from what we've seen, it's limited, but from what we've seen, he could be very good.
Yep. And this is Grant Williams. He's back on the table. It might be. He played really well the last 2 games and is averaging, he played 31 and 32 minutes. He's only really helping you in a couple of categories, but I think the scoring has been good. He had a good rebounding game. We know he can hit threes. Doesn't give you a ton across the board, but I think it could be.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not. I think he's definitely got a better chance in Charlotte than he did in Dallas.
For sure.
Just because of the team build and minutes and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be convinced. Like we've got a pretty big sample size of who Grant Williams is, and that isn't this guy that can average 20 points a game. And he usually only has value when he's got the hot hand and hitting those corner threes. He's a much better real life player than he is fantasy player. So
right.
Look, if he's available, pick him up and just roll with this and see what happens. But just be prepared to drop him if he has a couple of 7-point games with not much else.
Agreed. De'Aaron Fox or Damian Lillard?
Lillard.
Yeah, I think Lillard pretty easily for me as well. And this is just back to the Jalen Johnson one. I'm also biased because I love watching Jalen Johnson, so take that into consideration. I'm also biased because I watch a lot of Jalen Johnson because I'm a Hawks fan, but I still think that I take the bias out when I do my best to take the bias out when I'm evaluating, just because makes it fair. But and then this one just also goes back to that he's not necessarily shooting more efficiently, just dunking a lot, improved plays because he's playing for a contract. I think that's what I was saying with the shooting more efficiently is just that the percentages are better. Obviously, Banchero is also taking very difficult shots in comparison to what Jalen Johnson is taking. Because you're seeing him take step back threes, whereas Jalen Johnson's getting a lot of dunks. Like you said, I think he had 6, not their last game, but the game against Houston, he had 6 dunks. So yes, the shot diet, I guess, is different, which also goes back into the role being different. Banchero being the 1A or 1B to Franz Wagner versus Jalen Johnson being the 3rd or 4th option. So that obviously, I guess, kind of all goes together with valuing him. But the shooting more efficiently comment was just about literally the field goal percentage in 9-cat leagues being better. Let's see.
He's also playing with a very good point guard. So
he is. That definitely makes life easier. Whereas the Banchero is one of the main playmakers in Orlando. So
that's right. He has to create a lot more for himself, whereas Jalen Johnson just gets to his spots and Trey finds him. And DeJounte as well. Two good point guards.
Did McBride do enough to keep him alive as a streamer, or did he do just enough to make Alec Burks not a good streamer? What do you think about the situation in New York?
I think no word on the DiVincenzo injury yet, but if this causes him to miss time, I think it's Burks over McBride. For me, I think both could potentially get a bump up and be worth looking at, but I'd take Burks over McBride, I think.
Yeah, I agree. McBride only played 5 minutes in their last game. I think that if Jalen Brunson were to go down again, then McBride would be the answer. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. I hope that doesn't happen, but that's probably the only situation in which McBride would be worth streaming. I think if DiVincenzo's out, then Burks is the guy, not McBride.
Yep.
Head-to-head points 12 team. Keep Mike Conley or add Klay Thompson, Ben Simmons, Zubats, or Scoot Henderson. What do you think?
In a points league, category league, I'd be keeping Conley, but points league, it's probably, I don't know, is it Klay? I don't know. I don't know if I believe in Klay. I know he was very good last night. Simmons, there's still the minutes restrictions, the back-to-backs, that sort of thing. I probably wouldn't. Zubats is also still on a minutes limit. Scoot, questionable. I think at the probably in 3-4 weeks, it's probably Scoot. I just think they're going to release him and just let him go for it. And so in a points league, he could be pretty good down the stretch. I'd probably have Scoot over him. Probably not Zubats. Probably not Simmons. Maybe Klay Thompson.
Looking at it, I was looking at #basketball to get this. Last 2 weeks in just standard Yahoo points leagues, Conley has actually been better than all these guys.
Okay.
But I think that I wouldn't do Simmons. I think that Scoot or Klay Thompson would probably be the option if I were to make the drop. But I think I might be fine with Conley.
Again, I think it depends on where you're sitting. Like if you can get rid of Conley and then deal with Scoot, the ups and downs for Scoot with a view to him maybe being really good in the fantasy playoffs, then take a bit of a chance. But if you just need consistent, you know exactly what Conley's going to do, he does the same thing every night, then just stick with Conley.
Yep, I like that. Ausar Thompson or Gigi Jackson rest of the season?
Ausar.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And then just kind of with that, would you drop Max Strus for one of those guys, Ausar, Gigi Jackson, or Keontae George? Keontae George, yeah.
It's feel like Strus is safer, but he's been pretty bad. I'd probably drop him for Ausar. I'd probably, I don't know, Keontae is probably a wash. I don't know. GG Jackson. Yeah, as I said, I'm not really touching anyone in Memphis just because of what we've seen from them the last month. So I would probably consider dropping him for Ausar or Keontae, but not GG Jackson.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Ausar Thompson and Keontae would be the two. Yeah, and I think Strus I don't really have anywhere. It doesn't really excite me unless you just really, really need his three-pointers.
Yeah.
He's not giving you anything else really consistently. How do you see Cam Johnson rest of the season? Could he be the Cam before the injury or the one since, I guess, over the past month? What do you kind of think?
Yeah, he's been disappointing. I was reasonably high on him this season. I thought he'd have a good year. I don't even know. What is he this season? Just bringing up his numbers. He's probably like top 100 rest of the way, I would say. But he is dealing with an adductor injury, which is sort of renowned for being an ongoing thing. So he's top, what is he, top 100 to 106 in 9-cat. So he's probably, I think he can be better because he's been pretty bad and he has looked a little bit better when he's on the court the last month. So I think he's probably slightly better than what we've seen if you extrapolate across the whole season. But yeah, top 100, top 90 maybe. But again, this injury worries me a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess I need to say something too. But I like him. I don't really have him rostered anywhere. I think top 100 is probably fine, like a good place to put him. He's not a guy that I really drafted because he doesn't really – I mean, even looking at the season on Basketball Monster because it makes it really nice and pretty. He's a positive in threes and turnovers, and he's kind of a negative everywhere else. So he's not a guy that I'm super interested in for the rest of the season, but I think top 100 is probably the best place that I would put him. And like his peak would be top 100 rest of the season. But not much of a believer in having an injury like that, especially with a team that how far are they out of the play-in tournament right now? Let's see. They are only 2 games out, so we'll kind of see what happens, but not super high on him rest of the season.
Yeah.
Would you drop Josh Giddey, Gigi Jackson, or Pajemski for Dylan Brooks or Grant Williams?
Oh, well, I think Giddey GG and Podz are probably all guys that can be dropped in standard leagues. But would I want Dylan Brooks or Grant Williams? I'm not sure either. Like, I don't know if I'd have any of these guys in a standard league. If I had to rank them, I suppose I'd go. I don't know if I'd still have Giddey first. I mean, Giddey has the highest upside, I think. But with Hayward coming back, I just don't think he's going to play enough. Podz has been good, but they've got Peyton back now, so Chris Paul is close as well. So I think Podz is probably going to be a drop. GG, we've talked about him. Dylan Brooks has been pretty good, but that's without Fred VanVleet, so he will be back as well. And Grant Williams has blown up for 2 games, but again, it's Grant Williams. So I don't know. I'd probably still have Giddey at the top of this list just because of we know what he can do. Maybe Brooks for another couple of games. Grant Williams is a bit of a flyer, but I'm not convinced. I don't know. None of these guys really jump out at me. In a standard league anyway, I don't know. This might be a 16-team league.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't drop Giddey or Podz. I really like what Pajemski has kind of done. He played 25 minutes last night because Klay Thompson was hitting shots, but the games before that he'd been playing north of 30 minutes because Klay Thompson was not hitting shots. But that's kind of the difference maker for him. But I think he's played well when he's gotten the minutes. So I think the only one I would consider maybe here is dropping GG for Grant Williams, but that's not like you have to do it. I think it's kind of even because Grant Williams has been good, but we don't know if that'll stick. And GG Jackson has had some good games, but he's also had some really bad games. So we don't know what's going to be happening more often than not. So it's kind of the way I'd look at it.
Yeah.
Do you see Jordan Goodwin starting based on the injury / G League implications of the Grizzlies backcourt? I don't really see him starting, but I think that there's a chance that he plays legit minutes. If I'm not mistaken, he's only on a 10-day contract, so they're probably going to force him some minutes early on. And then after that, if he plays really well, then he can earn like a full contract and be ready to go for the rest of the year. But I don't know. I don't really see him starting.
Yeah, it's hard at this point without a full-time contract. But of all their guard options that they've got, if you sort of have Conchar, I guess if you throw him into that mix, and you have Gilliard and I don't know who else. Pippen is playing there. Like
him starting at point guard.
Yeah, I think Gordon is arguably the best of that bunch. So maybe they do start him. Maybe they just. I mean, it's Memphis. They've had like 30 players on their roster this year, so maybe they do just roll him out as a starter. I wouldn't think they would, but he could get enough. Like he could get 24, 26 minutes. We've seen him have flashes when he was in Phoenix, and I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not convinced that he does, but I would definitely monitor that situation because. Yeah, they need to find some guard depth. Maybe he's the answer.
Oh. And we'll wrap up with this one. Hey, guys, I was offered Devin Booker for Jaylen Brown and Tyler Hero. I declined. Did I make the right decision? And then added in that this happened 3 weeks ago. Kind of regret declining it. What do you think?
So what was Booker?
Booker, Jaylen Brown, and Tyler Hero. I think Booker's obviously the best player here.
Yeah.
But it's about the 2-for-1, like what the difference would be.
I probably would have taken Booker. I don't think it's not egregious in that I think it obviously is maybe haunting you a little bit and you're wishing that you took it. Hero could be good. I mean, with the injuries they've got, he could be really good for the next little bit in Miami. I mean, he's good anyway, but Jaylen Brown he's up and down. He hasn't had a great year. He's been solid, but yeah, I think I probably would have taken Booker, but it's not one of those trades I don't think that you're going to regret hugely. But Booker is certainly the best player there by quite a significant margin.
Yeah, I think I would have done that trade as well, like taken Devin Booker for those two. Jaylen Brown has been fine this year, but obviously hasn't been quite as good. And a lot of that has to do with, they have Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis there now, as well as Jason Tatum. So I think, I'm pulling up the numbers as I'm saying this because I think it's been a while since I've actually looked at it, but the field goal attempts and usage are both down for Jaylen Brown this season, which is still true. I'm double checking now. He was 20.6 attempts last year, 17.3 this year. Usage rate was 31.4 last year, and it's 28.2 this season. So less about him playing worse and more just about different offense with more options and more mouths to feed. And Tyler Hero is 81st this season in 9K. I think Jaylen Brown was like 83rd. And then Devin Booker's obviously top 20 guy. So I think I would have taken Booker just because I like getting the 1 and 2-for-1 deals. But I don't think it's the value is so off that it should be like a massive regret that you didn't take it. Like I think it ends up evening out a little bit. I would just prefer to have Booker.
Yep.
But I think that'll do it for this episode. Adam, as always, thanks for joining me. Is there anything that you have coming up that we should be on the lookout for?
No, just our usual shows over on FBI. I am recording later today, doing a show on, I think I talked about this yesterday briefly, we're going to be covering fantasy playoff punt trade targets. So if you're looking to shift your focus to specific categories, who are some players you can target in trades who get a bump in different builds. So we'll be recording that. I don't think we're going to do it live. I think we'll just record it in the studio, and it'll probably come out Wednesday morning US time. So that should be interesting. And then just usual shows and Twitter and all that jazz.
All right. Well, make sure everybody to check that out. Thank you again, Kingy, for joining me for this. Thank you everybody for asking questions. And we will see you guys again 3 p.m. Eastern time next Tuesday. Bring more questions then. But thanks for listening.